Hailing frequencies open, sir.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a bit of a different hailing frequencies. This is a Star Trek The Next Generation podcast where we go episode by episode through The Next Generation through the eyes of someone who's never seen it before. And that's me. Hi, I'm Ensign Harry. This is very interesting for me because this is an audio podcast. Some of you may be listening to it through iTunes and audio only, but we're also doing a special video version of the podcast live. And this is weird because I'm not used to seeing myself doing this. So I'm trying to get used to it. And that's why you had a little bit of a different intro there too. I am joined this week by Civilian Greg and Civilian Becca. Did we never give you guys like official titles?
I mean, I had a title back in the day when I took that test for like who I was in Star Trek. I think season 1 it was. I have to go back and listen to it because that was something really ridiculous. Like I was like the porter to like the cook or something like that. I don't know. It was something really strange. So yeah, civilian is good for me for now until I come back and figure out what I was.
Yeah, good. Got to get through academy.
Yeah.
And Becca, you went from lieutenant commander to civilian.
I couldn't remember which one I was, so I just put civilian in there. I also didn't. My spelling skills are very bad. I didn't want to embarrass myself, so I just copied Greg's civilian.
That
works. Well, thank you guys for joining me. Becca, do you want to talk a little bit about why we're video only today?
Oh, yeah, because this will be airing on our Free Comic Book Day online event, because obviously stuff is happening. So we couldn't have a Free Comic Book Day on the normal May 2nd? Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was 2nd this year. We couldn't hand out free comics. We couldn't do anything. So we're going to do a big online event. We'll be streaming. We'll have all sorts of pre-recorded stuff like this thing and some other stuff. We'll have a bunch of live events happening. We've got some free content that people can download. It'll just be a huge, big event that we're doing. It's going to be from like 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. On May 30th.
Very cool. Very cool. So we thought that since we're doing a video version of the podcast, we'd take advantage of that. So I wanted to do like a Star Trek show and tell where you guys present one or two things that you have that you are really excited to share with the audience. And I'll join in. I'll grab some of the stuff that I've collected now that I'm a Trekkie, at least at the ensign level. And so I guess Civilian Greg, we'll start with you. You are currently appearing before this beautiful wall of miniature starships. Why don't you tell us what you have for Star Trek Show and Tell?
Well, my starships back there, I have a bunch more to my left, but the camera just doesn't get them right now. But eventually I'm going to paint that background, put black and stars, and make it very more Star Trek-y. These are the Eagle Moss collectibles. I have issues 1 through like 102, so I have about 107 or so, because those big ones are like special issues. Miniatures of like just crazy starships that might have been there only once or twice, in the show. I wasn't gonna get them because at first when they were being solicited, they said they'd do 100 starships. I'm like, cool, I'll do it. Why not? Now they're on like issue like 180. I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. They're getting like really, really weird starships. I mean, they're already doing that before issue 100, so like I can't do this anymore. I'm just getting these weird starships I've never remember seeing, or I've seen them all probably once because I've seen everything for Star Trek, but and I don't think anything's based on any of the books. But yeah, so that's what I have in the background right there. I have a bunch of those, which been meaning to show off since season 1 at some point. I talked about it.
All those years ago. Do you have a favorite on the wall?
Honestly, I haven't looked at them for a while, but probably DS9. Oh, otherwise DS9.
Take a drink.
There.
Yeah, we're buddies.
Yeah. I mean, of course, but there's the Enterprise like right there. There's a Klingon one over here.
Got a couple. Enterprises.
So, I mean, there's some cool ones. So yeah, I just like looking at them come down here and relax and.
That's awesome. It's a great display too. It looks very, very nice with the shelves.
Thank you.
All right, Becca, what do you have for us for Star Trek Show and Tell?
I got 2 things.
Yeah.
First thing is big, and I'm not too sure how much this is going to fit on my camera.
Oh.
This normally hangs on my wall.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it is not sharp. Although if somebody tries invading my house, I'm going to use it.
So for the audio listeners, Becca is holding up. It's the batleth. Is that
Yes, the
okay.
batless. So the full thing, the 3-handled, 4-pronged Klingon sword.
Did someone make that?
Yeah, I mean, I go to conventions all the time, and it was one of those things where I was like, you know what, they have all those swords. I'm gonna ask them if they have that, and somebody did, and I bought it. So it's just really cool to hang on a wall.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, and then a second thing. So way back in the day in Atlantic City, we had a comic convention because we could, and it was bad. It was very bad. There wasn't a lot of people, but Nana Visitor was there.
That was cool.
Oh, very cool.
So I got a signed picture from her. She's one of my favorite characters in Deep Space Nine. So
Very, very cool. I don't
I
know.
do have one more thing I would like to show off also, if that's
Oh, yeah.
okay.
oh yeah,
Go for it.
No, this isn't my original one. I sold it at a yard sale years and years ago, and then she found one at I want to say like a thrift shop or something. It's the Klingon board game. It's a VHS interactive Star Trek game. You basically in the game, a Klingon hijacks the Enterprise. You have to save it. But the Klingon is, I believe,
it's the first appearance of that actor as a Klingon, even though in name in the VHS he's not the Klingon he is in the show.
Yes, it's what's his name? I forget.
Gowron.
Gowron, yeah, but it's different. Just some no-name
Klingon guy.
Klingon in this.
Yeah.
So wait, walk me through. It's a VHS tape that you'd put in, and then you'd play it. And what would you have to pause it to do, like the next action? Or
there's parts of the you start the game up. He'll come on the screen and tell you basically like, I took over the ship, blah blah blah, and then you pause the tape, and then the board itself prompts you when to turn the video back on, the VHS, to keep going further into the game. I haven't played it in a while, so I don't remember the rules that much, but I remember loving it, and just like basically the board is like a cross section of like Enterprise long-wise, so it's a pretty cool and unique Star Trek game.
So it sounds like we need to play this sometime. That's what I'm hearing.
I have all the pieces, so absolutely I'll have to bring it over when this whole when we get together again. We can definitely play it.
Do you have the most important piece, a VHS player?
I don't, but my friend Matt, who you know, probably does have one. I could probably borrow it and just make sure the VHS is still good, because it could be all warped.
I got one.
There you go.
Wow.
There's
nice.
also I also think it might be on YouTube. You might be able to look that one up.
Yeah, there's a way of getting it, so yes.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll do a very special episode of a video cast of the podcast of the Next Generation.
You have to figure out when
man.
it came out and line it up with the episode.
Yeah, I think it was 93.
No spoilers, please, from the VHS interactive game.
It's 93, but I'll double check, because I don't think there's much. I don't think it has much spoilers in it, to be honest with you. Many spoilers in it. So.
Okay. So for mine, I have two things as well I want to share. The first one is a gift from Ensign Lindsay, who hosted the last episode we just did. She did a cross-stitching for me that says tea Earl Grey hot, and it's got like a little Enterprise on the teapot and the teacup, and it's got like the L cars kind of.
Yeah.
Symbol, so I thought that was really, really cool. It hangs up in my nerd room, but I love it that she made that for me and thought of me. So that's one of my.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's rad.
Yeah, and the second thing is a toy that I had when I was younger, but this is not the one that I had. I ended up selling it at a yard sale because I wasn't a Star Trek fan back then. But it's the inner space model of the Enterprise that it opens up. So you can open it up, and I'm trying to get it on the screen, but there's like the bridge, and there's like little mini versions of the crew, and like you've got Picard, you can put him in his chair. You've got the captain's ready room over here. You've got 10 forward in the front. There's like some stickers that I haven't put on where like the engineering department is and stuff.
Cool.
I've got Data in the chair here, in the helm chair. So yeah, it's a really cool little like play set. And I remember loving this thing when I was younger and having no idea what any of this was, except I knew the bald guy was the captain. I knew that, but the rest of it, the back opens up so you can get the little shuttlecraft out.
Cute.
Does the shuttlecraft have a name?
I have no idea. It's probably on a sticker that I haven't put on
Gotcha.
this set. I tracked it down at a yard sale later on, and I ended up picking this up just because it was such a cool toy to me as a kid. And now that I'm actually into Star Trek, I understand what these things are. So yeah, the Inner Space Star Trek Enterprise model is my other show and tell piece.
That was really cool.
That is.
Yeah. So with that, let's jump into the episode. This is Booby Trap, season 3, episode 6, and we have a little presentation to go along with it, so that way you guys have something to watch along. Let me make sure I can get my screen up here and share it, and then just present it. All right, so there we go. There's the logo for the show, Hailing Frequencies, and where you can find us at soundcloud.com/hailing-frequencies. Booby Trap. This was an interesting one. Let me just go through really quick what we do traditionally here on Hailing Frequencies. We like to give shout outs to the creative teams behind these episodes. So this one is written by Ron Roman, Michael Piller, Richard Danis, and Michael Wagner, and it's directed by Gabrielle Beaumont. And you can kind of feel, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead to our final review of the episode. We're going to go through it here and talk about some of the highlights, but it kind of gives me the feel of an episode that's been written by 4 different people, just by some of the way it jumps around. And it seems like there were narrative threads that were supposed to go in one direction, and they ended up going in a completely different direction.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because that's one of the things I was going to talk about is this episode, and there was another episode I forgot off the top of my head which episode it was they brought this high-profile writer in. He was a really solid actor. He wrote Hill Street Blues and crime and cop shows, but he didn't have a really good feel for Star Trek. So he had the basic outline of this, and he directed some of it, but it went through a bunch of rewrites with other people. But he's one of the 2 episodes, this is what he did, and then they got rid of him because just wasn't a right fit, because he just didn't understand Star Trek, didn't really understand sci-fi. So that's why, as you said, you felt like it's written by a bunch of different people, because it actually was.
That makes sense. I mean, it's not that the voices of the characters are wrong. It's just, it feels like this episode was supposed to go, different branching paths, and they picked a really weird one that they veered off to. But we open up with Geordi on a beach. He's sipping Coco No-Nos, which I now want to know what's the recipe for a good Coco No-No.
I'm sure there's a website for other Star Trek drinks. I just don't know what it is.
We know that the young lady that he's with is named Christy. They're laying out on the beach. He snaps his fingers, and a violinist comes over and starts playing for them. And he starts kind of moving over and does the arm thing, and then she tells him, "Hey, I don't like you in that way." And my first question was, well, how did it get this far along before she said something, or he tried to make a move? How does that conversation go? Hey, do you want to come with me to the holodeck?
It's kind of nice to see even though in this futuristic world that's still men and women are this kind of it's still awkward, trying to tell somebody, hey, I don't really like you that way, or I do like you that way. And it's nice to see that was still in the show, and it's not just all super confident people doing super confident things, which I is the one thing I did like about this part of it, which and of course the actual holodeck was actually pretty good considering still 1989 with the matte painting and the water and the beach. They did a good job of putting it together.
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, honestly, I think it's just the violinist that just nail in the coffin. What?
Yeah,
he grabbed some generic pirate man ? And the least romantic song. Okay, not the least romantic, but definitely not in romantic category song. It was not.
You don't want to push too hard,
So do you guys think that she was maybe interested in him until the date, and he blew it on the date, or was she not interested in him at all and just got to this point where she finally had to tell him?
I think the latter. I mean, just when the show opens up, you kind of see in her face already. She's Doesn't care too much for Geordi in that
All I
way.
wanted was the layout on a beach. That's it. I didn't want anything else.
Got friend zoned real quick.
So we cut to Data and Wesley. They're playing this vertical chess, which I think I saw like a smaller version of this on Picard's desk one time. But this is the first time I've seen them actually like moving the pieces around and playing it. It's cool. I mean, I'm sure. Does this exist outside of Star Trek?
It does, yeah.
Well, now it does, yeah.
It does now. Star Trek created it, but
Yeah.
somebody made it and made the actual rules for the game, and yeah, it does exist.
But yeah, this one's 3D chess. It exists in the TOS in the original series.
Oh, wow.
Spock plays it a lot.
That's right. That's right.
And then it shows up as recent as I think Discovery had it in one of its more recent episodes.
I think Picard might have had it also in one of the episodes.
That's
Yeah.
I know it looked familiar. I think it was on his desk at one point, but I don't know if we ever saw anyone playing it before.
Not in the. I think Greg means Picard the show, not.
Oh.
Sorry, the new show. Sorry, I apologize.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Is the episode coming in the season, Becca, where that's a big part of the episode of or that already passed? I forget. The one with the. I don't want to spoil it for Harry if he hasn't seen it yet. With it was like that.
Wait, Discovery or Picard?
No, it's in Next Generation, the one that's where they do war games, and like
with Stratagemma?
Yes.
Yeah. I saw that one.
Doesn't he play? It's not similar, but like
No, it's a weird
cool.
like because they've
They've got like things on their fingers. And, just for the audience, this is now how 99% of my conversations with these two go. It's like, oh, did that happen? And I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil it for Harry. But then it's the one with the Worf and the thing and the Data, and then I go shuffle away sadly in a corner so they can talk about their secrets.
I mean, I know the show's like 40 years old now, but still, no spoilers for Harry.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. I mean, I'm going through this for the very first time, so it's very exciting, and I still don't know what's going on.
I think one of my favorite parts about this scene was the smugness of Wesley when he makes that move, and he's like, "Yeah, I got you," and they pin up to his face, and he's like, has that smirk on him. It's like that's why nobody likes you, Wesley. That's why nobody likes you.
Hey! I am Team Crushers. Team Crushers here.
I liked him more as he got older and more involved in the show. He just wasn't that weird kid who was just there. You know, he actually did things.
So this scene also sets the background of what's going on in this episode where the Enterprise is. They're in this, what looks to be an asteroid field, but it's the remnants of Aurelius 9, and it's the site of the final battle between what we'll later learn is the Promillions and the Menthars. And they apparently just fought each other to extinction, and the Enterprise is in there to kind of investigate, look at what's going on. And while they're there, they see Geordi walk into 10 Forward, and he's kind of dejected. He sits at the bar, and Wesley informs us that Geordi has been working on that program for days. So it took him a while to get that beach and the violin player and everything going on. Yeah, it took days for him to set that up. So poor Geordi. Oh, there he is. Yep. He's dejected at the bar.
I've been there before, Geordi.
Oh, man. So the Enterprise gets a distress signal from this Promillion battle cruiser, and Picard is super excited when he sees the shape that the cruiser's in. We've seen in some of the other episodes Picard and his interest in archaeological studies, the past, history, student of history. This one is great because he's excited that the engines are still intact, and we get the Indiana Jones line, "It belongs in a museum," which I thought was great.
Yeah.
There's no life forms aboard, and Picard says, well, I would hope not. This distress signal is probably 1,000 years old. So we know that there's quite a bit of time that the ship has been floating out there.
Going back for a second, for that ship was actually used in a movie that I know fairly well. Back in 19, I'm a huge horror fan. It was the spaceship in Night of the Creeps.
Whoa.
From 1986, yeah. And so they reused that ship for this episode. And if you love 80s horror, that's one to watch. It's really well done. Not to go off on a tangent about horror stuff, but yeah, I was like,
no, I
really cool.
I know that these ships have been repurposed a lot, within the show, but it's cool to hear that this was something that existed outside of the show that they brought back in.
They brought it in, yeah, yep. Which I thought was pretty cool.
So naturally, they want to send someone over to go check out the ship, and Picard and Riker arguing in the hallway on the way down to the transporter room. Picard really wants to go, and Riker is doing his best as, hey, I'm the first officer, you don't usually go on these away missions.
This part blows my mind because literally, like, Riker's like, we scanned it, but we need to do more scans. Literally an episode after somebody dies because they did scans and they didn't pick up on something. And then Picard's like, what? It's fine. It's safe. There's no booby traps on this. It's cool.
What could go wrong?
Just died.
And not only that, but like there have been other ghost ships that they've gone over to, and like bad things have happened. So
Riker is fully correct.
But Picard pulls rank. He starts talking about ships in bottles and how when he was a kid, he used to wonder, what it would be like to go into the bottle. And he says actually he thinks he may have had a Promilian cruiser in his collection. Which is funny because now Greg is in front of a bunch of small ships.
Fortunately, not the Promilian one. And I love like the line.
No, I think
we're losing you, Greg.
Oh, Greg, your audio.
We're losing him there.
Oh no. He is very enthusiastic about whatever
he's enthusiastic, yeah, and he's got the ships in front of him, behind him, but he doesn't have the Promilian cruiser.
Yeah.
There you go. You're back.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay. Your audio just cut off immediately.
I know. It sucks because I'm on a jetpack, which it's right next to my computer, so I shouldn't have any problems, but I do. But I guess what I was trying to say, all the back and forth between Picard talking about when he was a boy, when he built ships, and he told Data and Worf, like, didn't you do this as a kid? And of course, Data says, I was never a boy. Worf says something like, I didn't play with toys or something like that. And then O'Brien with the best line of all.
O'Brien!
Like, I know, it's one of O'Brien's best scenes so far. It was like, oh, yeah, I did it. Yeah, sure, yeah. To me, it sounded like he was kind of sucking up a little bit to the captain there.
It was a little quick. And Riker turned on him and gave him a death glare. And he goes, no, but really I did. I played with ships and bottles all the time. They were great.
There's also
but it's that deadpan O'Brien. So you're not really sure if he was telling the truth or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to do blooper reels, but there's a great blooper reel for this scene specifically. I assume you'll watch it eventually. It's amazing, though.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
So let's see. So Picard, Data, and Worf end up going over to explore the ship's bridge. They have these really cool handheld flashlight things. You can see if you're watching the video. We have the clip of it there. But Picard is so excited. He's talking about how this is so much more advanced and graceful than he expected. He thought it'd be clumsy, and it's a very elegant design. And he's just so happy to be where he is. They find a dead body in one of the chairs, and he's still happy. He's not freaked out at all. He's just like, oh, this is great. This is the best day ever. So let's see what we got next. Well, back on the Enterprise, Geordi is trying to go to who everyone on this ship tends to go to when they're in, especially relationship and love troubles. It's Guinan, and she should really charge by the hour because she always ends up saying the right thing at the right time for these guys.
Harry, there's no money in Star Trek like
oh,
this.
That's right. It's
all man
free and yeah.
You should at least get a therapist.
Yeah,
make him wipe
counselor.
down 10 forward.
It's funny how Guinan does better counseling than the counselor does most of the time.
It's true. It's true. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yeah.
But Geordi, when you're trying to get advice from somebody, he leads off with, so you're a woman, right? And Guinan says yes. And so he's trying to figure out what do women look for in a man? And that's a very subjective question. It depends on the woman, but Jordy's looking for like the one size fits all formula, to get girls.
Check mark.
Yeah. And so Guinan tells him that she looks for the head, and Jordy interprets that to mean, you look for a scientific mind, a great thinker. And she goes, no. I want to see if the guy's bald or not. I like bald men. And Jordy asks, a little bit more about that. And she says, well, a bald man was very kind to me once, when I needed help. And she leaves it at that. So I'm hoping that comes back again, because a lot of these threads get thrown out there and then they never get picked up on. So,
it comes back eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if she means Picard, because he's the only other bald person we know on the show, but, and they seem to have had a history, but, again, I mean, they leave it floating out there, and they never bring it to a conclusion. So
Yeah, this episode in particular, for some odd reason, is just full of, no, that does show up again. Like, as opposed to the usual, no, we'll never hear from it ever.
Yeah, longtime listeners of our show, I will throw something out there and be really excited about something, and then my co-hosts tell me, and you never hear from it again, or you never see it again.
Yep.
It's the most deflating thing.
And that's why season 3 this show gets really good, because they start actually going back, getting to things that they talk about, going back to in later episodes, later seasons, which is great.
Cool. And Guinan's final piece of advice here is she gets Geordi to kind of realize that he's much more at ease and he's comfortable talking to women if he doesn't try so hard. He's maybe overthinking it, trying a little bit too hard. So that's her kind of passionate advice that she gives him here. The Enterprise is getting some weird readings on their power, especially when they beamed everybody over. It kind of, the lights dimmed in the transporter room, and they kind of shrugged it off and said, keep an eye on it. But they do find the source of the distress signal in the Promillion ship. It's crude in comparison, according to data with their isolinear chips that they use. But Picard points out that, hey, this was from 1,000 years ago, or even older than that. I mean, he says when this ship was built, humanity was still using stone crossbows and mastering the clocks and things. And I just wanted to ask you guys, does that match up with the timeline correctly, or is he a little there?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I know it's like, because if he's saying that, that means it's probably over 15. So what's this, like, this is year like 23 something, I think, or
23
so
or 24, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like 13. So I mean, it gets a little bit, it does, but
The question is who's using stones and crossbows? Because we've used them a lot.
It's very subjective, yeah. So it's hard to say for sure. I mean, the problem with that is that they never talk about these two species again ever. Like, this is the only time they ever talk about these species. I don't think you see them. What are they called? Not the Murtons.
The Mentars.
Mentars. I don't think you ever see them. And you see, you do see the Prometheans in this, but they were only referenced again in like 2 books in the series, and one was a book that was based during Enterprise, the Scott Bakula show. And really, that's all they ever mentioned about Prometheans and Mentars. They never really go in the show anything about these guys again, so it's hard to say, like, time frame wise.
It's funny, we're getting a lot of species this season that are just they're wiped out, they're extinct. The Enterprise keeps encountering these last survivors of a species, or technology from a species, and then they talk about that species, and then they're like, oh yeah, and they're all gone now.
I mean, keep an eye out, because they seem to reuse all the costuming for like other species. So you might think, oh, he looks like a Promethean, but it's only a part of it. Maybe it's the hair or the face or whatever. So keep an eye out for that.
True.
Yeah, I mean, scientifically, we only exist so far into the universe. We exist very far into the universe existing. So it makes sense that there would be like stuff that existed beforehand, stuff that is still existing now. And we only get to even the Star Trek shows only get to so far in our Milky Way galaxy, and there's more outside of that. So it's at least cool that they have, like, not everybody became warp capable around the same 1,000-year cycle.
I did like that. That's the Prime Directive. That's what it's one of the main reasons for, because that happened, and not everybody's the same path of their evolution. So like Becca said, it is cool to see like people that were technology savvy or the opposite, in different time periods.
Right. And like this ship is still advanced for us today, for our society today. But now, they're looking back on it and saying it's crude. Well, Data's looking back on it and saying it's crude. Picard is just still he's in heaven. He loves every minute of this. They find a memory coil. I want to say they called it a memory coil. It was sort of like a chip that had a message on it. And they used the tricorder to boost the signal and sort of straighten out the message. And the message is from the captain of this ship. And he says that, he's failed his duties as captain to keep them safe, but the crew performed admirably. He wants the history books to record that and show it. And he also wants to take full responsibility for all the souls that are lost. But he doesn't really go into detail as to what's going on. One of the interesting things I saw about this scene was this was really the first time they've shown us the tricorder from this perspective and how it works. We've always seen it kind of from the back and somebody holding it up and pushing some buttons and, but this is the first time they've given us sort of this angle. If you're watching the video, it shows, what it looks like and like the buttons and things like that. So I thought that was really interesting here. I still don't know what they do. It reminds me of like Doctor Who and the Sonic Screwdriver. It kind of does whatever they need it to do for the episode. But okay, all right. Because I know they use it for medical, for checking over bodies and stuff for medical
reasons. There's a medical tricorder and a regular tricorder. So there's a difference between those two.
Okay.
It's like a grappling calculator, and you got the one button that just says solve. Like all of the buttons on the tricorder.
So they get this message, and then after they review the message, Picard, he's pretty much seen enough, and they go back to the Enterprise. Picard tells them, hey, let's send out a message to the nearby starbase or the Armada and have the ship towed in because it belongs in the museum.
This is when he came back and he said, "Oh, we saw everything, right?" I was like,
"Yeah,
saw the
they just got
bridge and the one thing. Like, you didn't see everything. Come on, man! Like,
they just turned on the lights.
Yeah, like you did. Come on. I know it's for a show. It's 40 minutes long, but come on."
It's all he needed. He saw all he needed to see. This is where the captain sits. Okay. When he comes back, though, there's a scene where Riker kind of stares at him and gives him like a really creepy smile, and Troy is kind of like looking at him and smiling, and everybody's kind of smiling at him, and he looks around and he's like, "What?" And she goes, "You're happy. It's nice to see this side of you. We don't get to see it very often." So I don't know what that says for Picard's demeanor on the bridge normally, but yeah. He must be pretty grumpy most of the time.
He's pretty straight out for most of this. There's a couple episodes like this one, some other ones where you see more of him being like, his hair down, as they say, even though there's no hair. But it's nice to just get a glimpse of like what he is as a human being, every so often, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Enterprise, they've seen all they needed to see. They tried to turn around and leave, and they can't move. They're having issues. They try to increase the power. They try to push the engines, and it's not going anywhere. So they go up to they go to yellow alert, which I wrote down here because that came up last week. Apparently, according to our friend Damon Mike, who responded on our Facebook group, the yellow alert, he explained that that's kind of having the crew get ready for battle situation, but they still can keep going, doing what they're doing. It's just sort of be at the ready.
Yeah, there's like no immediate threat.
Right. It's like if you're close to the neutral zone, you'd want to be at yellow alert so you can get everybody mobilized quicker. Geordi is reporting that everything looks fine with the engines, so he doesn't know why they're not moving. And in fact, if they give them any more power, the engines might shut down or might overheat. So they have to actually shut down the engines and kind of go at impulse power. But there's now a radiation issue with a blast of radiation about to hit the Enterprise, and so they go to red alert here. And this is where the power, it's kind of being drained from the Enterprise very slowly, but they do have the shields up to block the radiation. But if this keeps going and the power keeps getting drained, they're going to lose the shields, and they could be blasted with fatal radiation, within 30-something minutes, which is like the amount of time that's left in the episode, which is convenient. It happens quite a bit.
It does.
So Picard, he's looking out at the ship and he's wondering if maybe the Enterprise has fallen for the same booby trap that doomed the Promylian ship. And we don't know what happened to them and why they suffered and were destroyed, and now they could be suffering from the same thing here.
Oh yeah. Also, this scene really shows it off, but there's actually another costume change that happens, because I know we just got the new uniforms, but we get new uniforms, and only Picard's wearing it.
Should I go?
So Picard's on everybody else's outfit. They actually have lines that go down, actually like right through the badge, whereas Picard's is a solid, so they change it up just a little bit more. I think he's also got like an elastic band around his waist that's a bit better fitting than everybody else's. So they change it up. Picard's the only one that has it this episode, but they'll start rolling it out to everybody else.
Interesting. Is that the last time they update the costumes, or?
As far as I know, unless they do any other smaller changes, I think that's the last one. Other than like Picard gets some like cool costumes because he's Picard. Like, why not? But
yeah, at least in the TV show.
Yes.
Gotcha. So Picard calls an officers' conference. This is the first officers' conference we get. This is one of my favorite things of the show, is when there's a situation like this, and Picard gets all of his best people in a room, all the senior officers, and they go over options, and Picard weighs them all and tries to come up with a solution. I think that's a really, really cool part of the show. It's part of what makes Star Trek instead of we'll just shoot it with a big gun or something.
Yeah.
So they go over what the problem is. The engines are idling, the Enterprise is losing power, the shields will be gone. Data has no record of any type of weaponry that either side in this battle could have had to have caused this. Riker decides that we'll set up an away team, we'll go with Data, we'll go back over the ship, see if there's something we missed, and then Dr. Crusher gives the report on how to rearrange the families and the crew and put them on the odd-numbered decks, which I thought was really neat to see her sort of step up into action and give her report to Picard. This is what we're going to do with the people, the families, and then she also tells him, about the timelines once the shields fail.
Yeah, it's cool seeing her like super prepared and like getting that like a little bit of information like maybe minutes ago and being able to have a plan like set up immediately. We're going to cut power on certain levels and have people like it's cool.
Yeah, I like the scene too where it's like not I'm sure this has been happening in other episodes, but Worf is asked a question and he is immediately poo-pooed by everybody. Like like they were evaluating his opinion about like the weaponry and like what he can do being security officer on the Enterprise. So like it's a nice, like you said, nice round table discussion, like in a calm way, get everybody's input of like what their specialities are and make the proper changes.
Mm-hmm. And so now we've got Geordi down in engineering, and he figures out that there's something that's stopping the ship. When they try to go, some force is kind of stopping it and holding it in place. So he goes to the database and he looks up propulsion experts, anybody in the records on propulsion. And this isn't explained very well. I had to go back and kind of figure out what's going on here, because I thought these were current officers on the ship that could help him. And this was actually in the ship's archives of people who worked in propulsion. And he finds this Leah Brahms, who designed the warp engines for the Enterprise. And so he decides that he comes up with some kind of solution about reorienting the crystals. There's a lot of techno speak in this one that I'm like, I was trying to write it down as frantically as I could. Like, we'll reverse the polarity and rejigger the crystals and everything will be fine, and I just couldn't keep up with it all.
There's a lot in this episode, yeah.
I also I like this scene. It made me think of Matt and Mike and their complaints about seatbelts because Jordy's just rolling around in a rolly chair that is completely not connected to anything and definitely doesn't have seatbelts in any way. So
Good call.
the ship's just shaking. He's just in a rolly chair.
And one of the other things that was really neat in this scene was one of the options that Geordi kind of punches into the computer. He asked for something, and the computer said, "Oh, that'll be implemented on the next starship, the next version of the starship." And I thought that was cool to see that Starfleet is already thinking about what the next, I don't know if it's the next class of starships or the next generation of Galaxy class starships would have, but it would have this new feature. And Geordi's like, "Well, we don't have time for that. We need to find a solution right now." But I just thought it was neat to see them kind of talk about Starfleet planning for the future.
Yeah, you get a bunch of episodes where they go to Stardock or whatever, and they do get like minor upgrades and things like that. Where when they said they have newer technology, when they finally come back from their mission or whatever else, they dock and they get those repairs. Like in that episode, the 100111, whatever the heck that was. Episode, season 1, season 2, whatever that was. Yeah.
So Geordi decides what he's going to do is come up with go back with a program on the holodeck that will kind of allow him to run some scenarios and figure out what's going on, and maybe he can access some of the data from this doctor that he found on the database. So here's an episode, or here's the clip of Dr. Crusher giving her report to Picard. But Geordi, he runs a simulation, and it puts him in the let me see if I can find it. There it is.
There we go.
The original, one of the rooms where they were planning out the Enterprise D, and you get to see it under construction out of the windows, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's the Utopia Planitia Fleet Yard, specifically the one. Yeah, but nice. Yeah, it's where the Enterprise was made.
It's awesome because like the saucer, you can see some of the I guess webbing almost, where they were building it out, and it was really, really cool to see the model like this. I know they reuse models a lot, but they did a kind of like under construction version of it, which was cool.
Yeah, even having the nacelles be like completely dark because the ship's always flying, so they're blue. Having them completely just white gray was awesome.
Yeah. So he's literally at the Enterprise drawing board to try to come up with a solution, and he starts interacting with this doctor. He calls her Leia on the audio logs, and they're coming up with some plan to supplement the energy and try to get more energy. Right now, it's to try to help boost the shields and keep the shields running so that they can block out this radiation. Again, there's a lot of techno speak going on here, and it's all flying mostly over my head. But he accidentally, through his commands to the computer, creates an actual holodeck version of Leia, and he starts interacting with her, and he asks her to show him how to increase the power, and they start working together. But she's very robotic here. She's very matter of fact. She's answering his questions like a computer, and working together, they figure out how to extend the matter antimatter supplies to maintain the shields. And Riker's very excited about that, but then says, "Oh, so we're good, right?" And Geordi says, No, wait, that's just the one problem. You still have the rest of the warp, the actual propulsion issue to deal with."
Yeah.
And this is where it gets funny, because Picard says to him, "Oh, congratulations to you and your team on figuring this out." And it's like, well, what team? I mean, Geordi's down there by himself.
It's only ever Geordi.
This holodeck, and it's like that is one of the running themes of this show, is like, where is the engineering department when it comes to these things? They're just mind-boggling. And once Geordi got thrown into the chief engineer role, he kind of I think he just fired everybody else. I don't know, but there is no team.
Extras in this episode, so
there is no team. And the other thing is, like, what Geordi has created here, going back through the logs and having access to the Enterprise as it was drawn up, would be really useful training for an engineering department. I mean, it's literally it's a
was.
visual representation of the book that they would use to probably run the Enterprise.
Yes.
So why wouldn't this be standard operating procedure? I don't know. I don't get it.
There's too many problems on the holodeck, Harry. You already know that. There's already and there's
True.
still like 12.5 seasons left.
True.
Oh, quick note on this one too, just because she shows up, the actress who plays Leah Brahms. They were initially in the script, she was going to be a relative or a descendant of Daystrom, who's an important character in the Star Trek universe. But they hired her before realizing that Daystrom, the character that shows up in the the original Enterprise, the original series of Star Trek, was an African American man. And she is very white. So they had to change the script real quick to be like, this one. It's just really funny that like somewhere along the line they just didn't get the information down there that it was like, oh yeah, by the way.
Of course. So back on the ship, Data reports that they found more logs, more memory coils in like an open locker, and they're bringing it back to the Enterprise. I don't know if we have a clip for that, but there's the two ships outside of each other. So Geordi keeps working with this Leia hologram to come up with a solution. Now they're getting very excited. And Geordi, as he's talking to Leia, like I said, it's very robotic, very yes, no, this is what you need. And Geordi starts trying to push for more personality. And he starts asking the computer if it can recreate Leia's personality from, maybe she appeared publicly somewhere in some debates or something. Can you take her public appearances and put it into this hologram so that she's got more responses and more personality?
He was very specific in which he said specifically which debate she was in. So like,
yeah,
it was kind of weird. Like I know just the writing, but it is weird that he knew exactly which debate to use, and then the computer then extrapolated from everywhere else, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
But also, Geordi, come on, you're on a time scale, time frame here. Like you have like 2 hours or whatever,
Stick with what's important, right? Yeah, stick with what's important.
Yeah, energy's literally leaking out of the ship. Like, please don't use the computer to compute a personality.
Right. But like she kind of comes alive once you can see like the demeanor of the actress changes. She kind of drops her shoulders. She's less robotic, and you can see that once the computer follows through on Geordi's orders, there's more personality in this Leia facsimile, as they keep calling it. Back on the Enterprise, Data finds a log that mentions that the one species had these generators that could siphon off energy, and so they start to piece together that they must have these things hidden throughout this asteroid field that are bombarding with radiation, but also eating the energy. So basically, the more the Enterprise tries to push forward, the more it is powering these generators that are eventually going to kill them. So there's our central issue for the episode. So Geordi and Leia are now fighting. Like the very next scene, once he gives her some personality, they start just arguing with each other and screaming at each other. She wants to really push the engines, really hard. And Geordi's saying how, you can't do that. Mathematically it might work, but I have more experience, real world experience, living on this ship, working with it every day, and it's got mileage on it. So you may blow up the engines by accident by doing this. And she's looking at things very much through the eyes of someone who's doing it through the books. And you later find out that the designers never actually get to go on to the ships. And she says that she wishes she could fly through space. The designers wish they could fly through space, and Geordi says the chief engineers should be there when the ships are being built. And that's a really good point. I mean, why not bring the people who are going to be responsible for every nut and bolt on the ship in earlier? We know here Geordi wasn't in the chief engineer role, when they were heading out. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know why it's not standard procedure. So back on the Enterprise, they're looking through the logs, and now Picard is looking for any kind of variations in the field, the generators, to see if they could maybe brute force their way through. Maybe they could find one on an asteroid and break the field. And so he orders after this conversation, he orders Worf to fire on one of the asteroids, thinking they can maybe find it there because they found like a 0.01% fluctuation in that spot. And Geordi is back on the bridge at this point. He warns them that, if you do this and draw power away, it may actually cause the shields to drop faster. We'll lose critical systems faster. And again, this is one of those situations where Picard has to kind of weigh the options, and he chooses the brute strength option, and it doesn't work. So I thought that was a really cool. There's the picture there of the Enterprise firing the phaser. I thought it was a really neat way to show that Picard's not perfect. Not every decision that he makes is the right one, and I think it's good for the show to show that sometimes.
Yeah, this whole episode is just what would happen if Picard just took Worf's advice at every turn. We should definitely shoot it. Like, okay, cool, good, let's do that.
Due to them using the phasers like this, the energy reserves drop by 10%, and so the Enterprise has to start cutting off systems very quickly. One of those systems they cut off is the holodeck, and it literally leaves Geordi standing in an empty room. And you can tell at this point that Geordi, he's starting to develop feelings for Leia, and it's
that's Geordi.
I mean, it's not 100% his fault. She repeats over and over again. She's like, "Well, when you touch the engine, you're touching me," and it's like, computer, what kind of talks was she at that she was using these words and massaging where was she that the program was like, you know what, she definitely looks like a person that would massage your it's
what I want to know is who do you where's the HR in this? The computer section harassing Geordi here. Who do you go to from there? It's a bit, but you're right. It is I like how the computer extrapolates that part of her personality. From a couple of talks, it makes zero sense.
Yeah, and you've got to think is this Geordi falling for her because she's a fellow kind of tech geek, so to speak, or is he just kind of has he had a series of losses in the courtship department, and is he just trying to cling on to the first anything that gives him
a little bit of both? Because in the beginning, when he's talking to Guy, and he says, "Oh, so you look for their brain," and clearly that's what he's doing. Her, she's very smart, whether she's the computer or not. To him, she's very intelligent, so that attracts him. But he's also, like you said, it's probably because he's not using his best judgment because he's had a bunch of bad first dates for a while. It sounds like so. It's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, I also feel like it's a lot of, if a computer was to look at you specifically and only take your personality based on public speaking roles, you would probably come out as a completely different person than you are just sitting around doing whatever on normal days. So it's probably for as much as the computer's well, it's a 9% chance that it's where'd you even get that? Where'd you even get that number from? You don't know what she's like.
And they're not supposed to use personal logs, so they clearly didn't get personal logs from her to get more personality. She's supposed to she'd be like Spock, very dry and very just by the book, because that's what the computer can get from that. But
maybe repeat. Yeah, maybe she'd repeat that one joke she made that everybody really laughed at the one, just over and over and over again, because the computer doesn't know what else she said.
Is that before or after she gave back rubs to the entire audience as she's going down?
The other theory I have is this is the computer. This isn't the computer's oh yeah, I'll make that personality. It's definitely a person and not me in disguise as a lady. Hey Geordi, how's it going?
So, because of the draw on the energy, the holodeck shuts off, the Enterprise is pretty much off. They show an exterior shot of the ship. I'm not sure if we have a clip of it. But it's everything except for the blue, I forget what that's called there, the bottom. I can show you guys, hang on. This I've got a model here of the Enterprise, and it's all lit up usually, but now with the energy reserves off, it's just the one This one thing is blue. This here.
Oh, the dish, whatever they call that.
Yeah, the front of it, the front of the
like the front deflector dish or something. I think it
Yeah,
is.
it's
battle bridge section. Yeah, is blue. So it's basically flying through space like this. The nacelles are off. Everything is off except for that dish. Geordi reports to the captain. He says, "Hey, can you turn it back on the holodeck 3? I have a propulsion system program simulation going in there." And he doesn't mention anything about the girl or anything like that. He's just, because he can't override the computer himself, so he needs the captain's orders. And Picard reinstates it, but he gives him 1 hour. He says, "You've got 1 hour to try to figure this out because now we're in trouble." So Geordi and Leah go back to work. They're trying to figure out what they can do. They come up with this idea that there's fluctuations whenever the Enterprise makes an action to go, like, let's say, go faster, they get a reaction from the generators to push them back. And there's like
an equal and opposite reaction.
Yes, equal and opposite. And there's like a split second of time in there before the energy field reacts to what the Enterprise is doing. So, they start trying to come up with a plan on maybe they can take advantage of that time and make adjustments to move faster than the force field can push them back. So as they're talking, this is where Geordi's stuck with the power gets shut out, and there they all are sitting in the dark. But as they're discussing it was interesting because I know there's a clip of it in here. There's the back rubs. The back rubs start.
Really creepy back rubs.
Yep. The back rubs start up. There is a model of the Enterprise A on the table, right? Is that the A there from the original series? Looks like it.
I meant to look
it.
I meant to look it up. I'm not 100% if it's the A or any of the letters between now and D, because they all are fairly similar. But it's definitely a previous Enterprise.
Yeah, there's an older Enterprise model on the table, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I have a couple of those back here.
Grab them. Let's compare.
All right. Yeah.
So the adjustments that they come up with, it's going to take 1,000 adjustments per second, which they said is faster than any person or even data can computate. So I think it's Leah's projection that comes up with the idea that if they turn the ship's control over entirely to the computer, then they'd be able to make these computations and get through the rest of the field.
Yeah, she specifically says when that conversation goes, "I can," and then no, you can't. You're a human, because he gets kind of forgot about that, and she's like, "No, I'm the computer. I can do it."
Yeah, Geordi's clearly blurring the lines and forgetting that this is just the holodeck. And...
So, Geordi. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Picard, this is where Picard comes in, and he's surprised to see another person standing there with Geordi, and Geordi very quickly is like, "Oh, well, this is Leah. She used to work on the propulsion systems, and nothing weird is happening here. We're working, I swear." So this is kind of where I thought the episode was taking a turn, where Geordi was going to get distracted because he was falling in love on the holodeck and wasn't going to be able to. Picard was going to have to step in and like pull him out or something, but didn't quite go down that road. But Geordi presents his idea to Picard. Picard is visibly concerned, not sure about turning over all control of the ship over to the computer. They're talking about this. He talks with Riker, talks the plan over, and they talk about how Riker's impressed with computers and their ability to take orders, but not necessarily their ability to give them. And I thought that this was an interesting flip from Measure of a Man, where, not necessarily saying Data is a computer, but Data is, he's more computer-like than the rest of them, and that he is giving orders. He is operating as a Starfleet officer. And, it was just kind of interesting to see so much concern on the behalf of Picard and Riker about trusting the computer and allowing the ship to basically go into autopilot, and how uncomfortable they were about that. This is also where Picard starts waxing poetic. He's going back to the ship in a bottle analogy and talking about how, I can't believe, we used to fly planes with one propeller and, take over. And now the computers are flying us, and it's kind of funny because if you ask any airline pilot nowadays, they would say that the planes pretty much fly themselves.
Yeah. Just in case.
So Geordi is running simulations in the holodeck, and he sees that when they do turn over control of the computer, that it did succeed in one simulation, and Leah gets really excited about that, and he says, well, wait, let's run it again. They run it again, and it fails. So it's not necessarily 100% success rate. And it's funny because watching this little simulation of the ship going through the minefield, it reminded me of, if any of you out there have played the Star Wars pinball machine, not the mixed trilogies here or mixed franchises, but there's a video mode where you fly the Millennium Falcon through some asteroids, and it looks a lot like this.
It does, yeah.
While they're running those simulations, the shields fail completely, and now there are no more shields. The Enterprise is getting blasted with radiation, and the computer helpfully tells us that they are all going to die in like 26 minutes. Picard reports down, and he wants to know what Geordi's solution is. Did they find another way? And Geordi asks for 2 more minutes. Please, it's like the kid, like, 2 more minutes, Dad. I don't want to come in yet. Come on, give me some more time. Play the computer. So they're going to try to come up with some other option, and this is where Geordi comes up with an idea to approach this problem in the opposite direction. And again, a lot of techno speak, but basically it whittles down to Geordi thinking, well, maybe we're trying too hard to overpower the energy field. What if we go in with less power? We try like maybe a short burst at impulse, and then use the thrusters to try to maneuver around the asteroids. So that's the other proposal that he came up with. This was a great scene because, again, Picard is in the bridge and he's getting the information from Geordi, and he's weighing everything. He asks Geordi, what are the risk factors involved with doing this? And Geordi says, well, look, it's not 100%. It's just pretty much even money with turning the control over to the computer. It's the same thing, but a computer doesn't have the experience, the ability to think for itself the way that a human would if they were at the controls. So they ultimately decide to go with that plan, turn everything on the Enterprise off, and just try to maneuver on thrusters. The interesting thing here is Geordi offers to take over the controls, and Picard tells him, no, you've done your job. You've done what you need to do. I will handle this from here. And he relieves Wesley at the command. And no, can't trust Wesley to drive. But what I thought was, when's the last time Picard has driven a starship?
There's people whose jobs is flying the starship. Like,
right.
Yeah, I liked how he cracked his knuckles and he was like all ready to go. And apparently, this is one of 3 times in the show he actually takes over at the helm to fly. So
interesting.
I forget if it happened. I don't know if it happens 2 times after this or once before, once after. But this is 3 times.
Yeah, this is the second time because it happened in the 10111
That's right.
Yeah.
episode. Wow, we're that episode twice now.
Very important episode.
Oh yeah.
But I see the reason why they do this is to bring it full circle, because he was just waxing poetic about wasn't it great when we had one propeller, and now for all intents and purposes they basically have one propeller, and it's up to Picard to now drive the Enterprise through this asteroid field on very little power, and with little room for error. Now that the shields are down. The other thing that I thought was interesting was maybe it's because there would be too much of a delay between him giving orders to someone to turn the ship left or right, and then him, and those orders being carried out. But I don't know. I mean,
it's weird.
It's a weird. It was a question I had. I was like, why is Picard taking over here? I mean, is there anything other than narrative drama?
I also you get a second of the pilot's layout. and there is like a D-pad and like some buttons. It's really
Yeah,
the D-pad hit me like I was just like, oh, how does that work?
He'd push left on the D-pad, and they're like, okay, the port thrusters are now firing. I could move over a little bit. Worf and Riker were also like calling out the obstacles on the viewer, and like I just wanted Picard to turn around and be like, okay, you're not helping. Like I can see them on the viewer in front of me. Like we're good. But I did like that Riker disabled. There was like a current, you know how in every sci-fi movie when there's like a self-destruct or something, there's like a voice overhead, you know, self-destruct in 10 seconds, in 9 seconds. Well, this was kind of happening here where like the fatal radiation countdown was going, and Riker disabled it because he was just like, we can't listen to this, you know, over and over again. So I thought that was kind of good. But what ends up happening is Picard ends up maneuvering the Enterprise closer and closer to a large asteroid, to the point where Data's like, sir, what are you doing? You know, you've got to get through this. And this is where Picard does this from time to time, where he's like, I know better than everyone else on this ship, and they're going to love this move, and I'm not going to tell anybody about it until we do it, you know? Because he decides to basically slingshot the Enterprise using the gravity of the asteroid to fling it outside of the debris field. And nobody picks up on this until it's after it's done. And he doesn't tell anybody that he's doing this until after it's done. And then everybody's excited and blown away by it.
You would think Data would know about like this. Like he would extrapolate that he's doing this. You know, if nobody else has to be it, but Data should know.
Yeah,
Right.
first off, okay, it's a full straight on like Tokyo drift. He doesn't even like kind of like this ship like straight up like sideways move.
Where was the screech sounds, you know?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. You know, but secondarily, the Enterprise, whichever one, does it in one of the movies where they slingshot around a planet to get more speed. Correct? I think it's one of those. Anyway,
Yeah, that's to go back through time, I think.
But like
Also,
the point being is
also Superman.
it's dumb, but yeah. But the point being is they do it to get speed, and that's exactly what Picard. Like, I mean, people have done it.
Apollo 13, right? Slingshot around the moon. They could just open the history books.
Maybe he wasn't expecting the full Tokyo drift, but like. Yeah.
I just think that, you know, Picard, maybe let your crew in on what you're doing. Just, hey, this is my plan, this is what I'm gonna do, whether or not you like it, I'm doing it anyway. You know, it just, instead of the wink and the nod and be like, watch this. Just turn the whole ship around. The very next thing they do, Picard says, let's make sure no one else falls for this booby trap, and they decide to blow up the ship and the asteroids and everything else instead of just placing can't they just place a beacon? And
yeah, they've done it before. They do it again. They place a warning beacon. Don't destroy a 1,000-year-old pristine ship that's, you know, if money-wise, it'd be worth so much money right now. It freaked me. And also, too, what bothered me, too, at that whole scene is, like, I get it, too, but, like, you see in the simulation, like, the thing going back and forth and flipping and flying, and then it hits, like, 4 times and he's out of the asteroid field. Like, come on, guys. Like, come on. I know it's a TV show. I know it's 40 minutes long, but clearly it was much harder, the simulation, than 4 or 5 blips and bloops on the
computer couldn't do that? They turn left, turn right, go.
Yeah, it just, you know, it's really stood out at me. Like it was pretty eye-catching, eye-appealing, eye-opening, I guess. Yeah.
I just didn't. I thought that they would preserve the ship and just warn people about the area, and then while they had more time and they could use their sensors from the outside of the field to try to pick out which ones were the beacon or where the generators were, and then pull the ship out. I don't know.
Unmanned vessel, like what? There's so many things.
Nope. Let's blow it sky high. All right. And
nothing gets that close to defeating Picard and gets to live.
They'll never let us talk about it again.
Then we get this. Geordi realizes that sometimes technology needs to be turned off, and that seems to be the big lesson that he learned.
Or turned on in this picture.
That's the lesson that he learned at the end of this, that, you know, turning the ship off and not relying on the computer is what saved the day. And so I need to say goodbye. And you know, they talk about how they made a good team, and then we get this kiss, and we get the lines that Becca was talking about where she says, every time you look at the engine, it's just, you think of me, it's my engine. And every time you touch the computer, it's me. It's like you're touching me. And it's just so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah, seriously, what debates was she at where she was kissing the opponents? Like, why did the computer make this happen? This is all computer calculation.
It would be so much better if he goes to approach her and she pulls back and she goes, "Oh, Jordy, I just don't like you like that." And exactly that Christy said.
That would be amazing.
God, that would be so
the computer just chimes in like, "Oh, we also use some of your recent holodeck experiences to help craft your perfect situation."
We didn't know where it was going, so we just kind of yanked from wherever.
Like, at the end, like, she should push a button, say thumbs up or thumbs down for a good program.
How do you rate this program? But yeah, he kisses her and says goodbye and realizes that, this is just a hologram, and, I'm done now. We're turning this off, and that's it. That's the end of the episode. So I thought that this was going to go in a couple of different ways. I thought that maybe the holodeck simulation of Leah would turn evil, and they'd give control to her. It seemed like they were setting that up, like they'd give control over to her, and it'd be a wrong thing to do, it'd be evil. Or Jordy would fall in love with her and refuse to give her away, or like get so distracted that he couldn't focus on what he needed to be doing. I just didn't expect it to just kind of be like Jordy understood at the end, like, okay, like, I'm done now. I'll just get my kiss and be out of here.
You said earlier, just a couple minutes ago, you said it surprised you that, that they blew up the ship at the end. It's like,
yeah.
You weren't expecting that. It's like cars drooling over this ship, literally, and like just buzz it up willy-nilly.
It just didn't feel like there was very much conflict in this episode, other than the outside issue of the radiation field and the looming shields dropping and whatnot. But there wasn't. I was expecting more internal conflict by the way that they were setting all this up, either like Jordy versus Picard in doing his duties, or Jordy versus Leah, on the holodeck, something. But it just seemed like they ran out of time, or that was one writer's idea, and another writer wanted to do the whole energy field thing, and another writer wanted to do something else, and they just didn't all get on the same page.
Yeah, you're right. It felt like that. There were like 2 or 3 episodes in this one episode where you could have like expanded on multiple things in the.
Yeah. We're losing you there again, Greg, but I think I got what you mean. Like, there were a lot of narrative threads that they could have pulled on, and they just didn't. They just kind of had to wrap it up within 40 minutes. This would have been a great 2-parter, even if like the first part was setting up the relationship between Jordy and the hologram, and they dealt with whatever issue they had to deal with, but Jordy kept, going back to the holodeck and back to the holodeck, and, they had to pull him out. Or Leia turned evil or something. I mean, it just seemed like there was a lot of setup going on here, and it all got wrapped up in the last like 2 or 3 minutes.
Since my audio is working again, yeah, like what you just said there. It actually there's episodes later in the show, and where they kind of go into things that you're just talking about there, where it's like not the exact same plot, but they hit some things you just talked about, where it's like in a much better way and a much more interesting way.
Yeah. It feels like they almost tacked on in a bad way the whole computer versus man thing near the end of it, and it really made Picard and Riker seem, like you said, almost out of character, where they were just like, this technology nowadays. I want to go back to the time when there weren't computers in my car, like right. So.
Old man, cranky Picard.
Yeah.
I almost kind of think too, like maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but maybe they, thought like they didn't think of Data anymore as a computer, like they just thought of it as the person, which I'm sure that wasn't in the script, but but it was weird how it was very much like don't trust computers.
Right. And we'll see. Maybe that comes back. I don't know. But did you guys have any other thoughts about this episode? As Civilian Greg, this was one of your picks. I think it was on your list. Is there any particular reason, or?
Because I do like again, I can't say too much, but things this episode come back later, okay. and that's why like this episode on its own isn't all that great, It's actually probably, I think, one of the lowest rated episodes of the season, going through IMDb and looking at their the rating system.
Mhm.
But things happen in this episode where, like you talked about earlier, where later episodes kind of come back to things, and that's why I like this episode. That sets up a lot of different things moving forward. At least I know definitely 2, maybe 3 things in the future that happen that come out of like this episode, more or less. That's why I like this one so much. Not because of it on its own, but because of what it does and what the writers go back to.
Yeah.
Becca, what do you think?
I mean, I was just here for the ride, you know. I just.
Well, I just one last thing about the actress who plays Leah Brahms. She actually auditioned a lot for Star Trek. She was actually auditioned for Troy and Yar.
Oh, wow.
She didn't get it. She also for 7 of 9 in Voyager, but also she was also one of the last. She was a front runner in being Captain Janeway in Voyager.
Oh, wow.
So. She does come back as different characters in other episodes. I think in DS9 she's in a couple episodes. I think as just some ensign or whatever. But like she definitely auditioned a lot for Star Trek, and almost had a bunch of roles for them.
Cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like it's weird if she was the captain of another show when she came as a human in the show, but that hairstyle is so distracting. You could probably easily do it, and I wouldn't recognize her.
Yeah, it is distracting. It's almost a Janeway one where they should put that bun-up roll thing in the first couple of seasons.
Do you guys have any other behind the scenes or anything else about this episode? I'm gonna have to check out that blooper reel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
you should. It's pretty good.
I mean,
it's
you're sadly probably gonna want to wait until the end of the season just because it's
Yeah,
gonna have stuff and
yeah.
everything. But
yeah.
All right, I'll make a note of it.
I don't have anything else really. I mean, this episode was kind of like there's not a lot of extras in this episode that I found that was like interesting at least.
yeah, I know. Speaking of Utopia Planitia, wow, words. People who watch Picard actually should recognize the name because it does have significance in that show. I'm not going to say anything because it's all spoilers forever,
Yeah.
but that does, it pops up so much because obviously it's I think Voyager's made there, like a lot of the big ships are made in that yard.
There's a bunch of stuff on in Enterprise talking about Utopia Planitia also. I don't know how I forgot this. Going way back in the back, this is actually the first episode directed by a woman.
Yeah, yeah.
That was interesting. Yeah, I went back on my notes. This is the very top of my notes, which I had hidden under my computer.
Very cool.
But yeah, Utopia Planitia is like the go-to like yard for most of Star Trek. They do other places, but they do come back to that a lot, which is cool.
Interesting. I thought that this Geordie's little program should be like now standard for all engineers. And when he finds an engineering team wherever they are, he should make them all go down there and at least learn from.
Was there any actors in the engineering the times he was down there? I don't remember. I don't think there was.
I think there was one or two background.
I think there was one or two in the background when in the very beginning when he was like running around saying that the engines looked normal but they were not moving. I think
literally there was no engineers in this episode.
Which blows my mind because this should be all hands on deck for engineering. Like, why have an engineering department if you can't figure out this whole like the energy is drawing the power and the shields aren't working and everyone's gonna die? I mean, it's got to be more than just one person's responsibility to fix that.
It's true.
Oh man. So I think that's going to bring us towards the end of another episode of Hailing Frequencies.
I want to mention one more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing. It's barely related to this. It's related to the fact that we all have free time now, and I've finished Discovery, seasons 1 and 2, and I don't think I've had a chance to talk about it.
No.
But it makes me appreciate Deanna Troi so much because hot darn is that show a constant flow of just people having PTSD and then being put immediately onto the crew. Again,
Oh, no.
like there's crazy things that happen and they're just like, you know what, you're fine, let's get back on, and it causes problems all of the time. There's literally an episode where the admiral is like, oh yeah, I was a therapist once, let me talk to you for 10 minutes, and fixes like all of the problems that this person had, and it's like they need a counselor on this darn ship.
Well, that's why they didn't later, because at the time, it was before There was no counselors on Enterprise or the during the original series.
True.
It had to come later in. But you are right. I didn't realize that watching it, but you're absolutely right that a lot of conflict does come from. They have a lot of PTSD in the show. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of problems where it's just like, oh, you're a prisoner of war? Sure. Take that station. Like, what? You literally just got back.
Did either of you watch Picard? Because I know that as we're recording, this is all finished now. So, okay, both of you. So, what is the, spoiler-free, really quick, what is the thumbs up, thumbs down? How do we feel?
I mean, the dog's only in the first episode, so, like, how can it be, like, a thumbs up?
I think,
Nah.
I think they really try to, like, I'm hoping the new Star Trek show they're talking about, the Strange New World show, is more like Star Trek, where this is very much like Discovery and Season 3 of Enterprise, where it's like very serialized, so there's no real individual. There's a couple, like, that one episode, when you meet some of the other characters come back from Next Generation. That was a really good episode. But overall, like, the same problem with a lot of other serialized shows, like especially like the 13 episode seasons, where it's like, I feel like they have this really cool story, and then they realize they have like 2 or 3 episodes left, and they have to get it fixed, and they kind of do all this stuff at the very end, where it's like, oh, well, that should have taken way longer than it should have.
Yeah.
I don't think it was the greatest show, but I did enjoy it for what it was. I think it's better than Discovery, at least definitely season 1. Discovery season 2 is better, but I think Picard is better, the best of this new run of shows right now. And not just, I tried to really look at it as like, not just, I had, looking back at Picard and like, I love Picard and the rest of the cast that comes back and whatever. It's like, no, this isn't a show I would say probably I would just recommend to somebody who's never watched Star Trek before, which is a bad thing. But if you watch Star Trek, this is a great show. Or
a good
show, which has have some good stuff and some great stuff in it, but like it's a good show overall, personally.
It's funny because it's taken so long for anybody to even get to the good level for new Star Trek, lately. The bar has just been, it was so high, and especially with the expectations with everybody coming back, this would have been a really hard in its first season show to just hit everybody's interests and work for everyone. So, do you feel like the characters progressed, or were they held in place, or do you feel like some may have even are worse off than they were in
for me? Definitely. Like I don't know who. Like, do you know what characters came back in the show, Harry?
I've seen the first trailer because we were at Comic-Con, so I know that Riker comes back, and I know that Troy comes back, and Data is there. I don't know if that's really him or not, but those are the 3 that I've seen.
I don't want to get too much like. So, whenever you watch it, I thought they did a good job with Data.
Okay.
But there was not a lot of Troy or Riker. It was just very. I'm glad to see you got to see where they kind of were and what happened, and you get enough of their backstory real quick to kind of understand what they're doing. But again, they really didn't go heavy on the Next Gen cast, which is good. I thought good because they're trying to do their own thing.
Yeah.
But again, I think that might have been a failure also, where like you get shoved into these new characters who are very flawed and very like not original Star Trek or TOS, you have Enterprise or Voyager. This is very much like Kelvin timeline, Kelvin characters, Discovery characters, where they're very flawed, and this isn't the perfect Federation, which I'm fine with. It's just very different, and that's why a lot of people don't like these new shows, because there's lots of shades of gray and lots of humanity isn't as perfect as it looks like it was in Next Generation and Voyager, and even DS9 to a certain extent, even though you do see more of that less of that in DS9. So I understand why people are weird about it.
Definitely.
Becca, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it does. It tries really hard to hit that gray area, and I think it's something that, Deep Space Nine does a lot better. I mean, I'd like Deep Space Nine a lot better, but it is trying to hit that, like, it's an imperfect world. Starfleet is imperfect, which, I mean, I guess it's cool, and it's cool to see in the ways that they do it, and like it's not like Starfleet went and like murdered babies or something. Like it's like an actual moral question, or like a more like a moral problem. But yeah, it was good. I don't think Picard's character is the same, which I don't know if that's for better or for worse.
Okay.
And I do like the interaction, because the Riker, Deanna Troi, Picard interactions at least kind of nice, because they aren't captain and first officer and whatever anymore, so they're just friends. So it's cute to see. But you get too much of their character. You don't get too much of them in general.
Mm.
But yeah, it's not. I'm glad that they did go with a new cast as opposed to trying to like just dredge up the old. Yeah. Although I'm very disappointed. I don't know if it's true or not, but everybody keeps posting this thing where like they were saying like somebody may have come up to the writers and were like, no, I just want to do like a small town murder mystery and like whatever place in France that Picard is at, where he like slowly gets clues to like something weird that's happening in the town. So it's like small scale, but big for France, and small town that he's in, but not too big, and like
that was one of the first ideas.
Yeah, and man, that would have been so much better. I would have like
a lot more number one too.
Yeah, the dog would have been there. The two people that Picard's with, it's kind of spoilers. The two people that Picard has at his vineyard are really interesting.
They are, yeah.
And like they
drop off halfway through the season. They're kind of not there anymore. It's like,
they're just gone, and it's like that stinks because they're really interesting people.
Yeah, Picard and his like old Dixon Hill get up, like doing like a little Dixon Hill mystery for a season.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Yeah, I understand why they wanted to go big, but like I felt like they went big in Discovery season 1 and 2, and they're going to go big. Maybe they from what it looks like, the Area 51 or not Area 51, that Section 31 is going to be big, but then like Strange New Worlds, I'm hoping it's like more like less serialized, and just like not everything has to be a big giant world changing thing, and that's what one of my biggest problems with like the Star Trek movies are, and even like Discovery and this is going through. They're all like world-ending problem, and it's like that's not what the show's about. It's about smaller problems. Sometimes you'll get that big, overarching big problem like the Borg. You get that, but it's not. That's what Star Trek is not that, and that's what a lot of people have problems with the movies are. It's very big, whereas the show is not that.
Yeah.
So real quick, would you recommend yes, no to someone who's like on the fence, like a longtime fan on the fence? Would you say check it out? Or
I mean, if you watch Star Trek and you've watched 5 seasons of the original series, 7 seasons of Star Trek Next Generation, seven series, if you've watched all of these seasons, like you're gonna watch it anyway. You might as well. That's what I did. I literally just sat and watched it and drug through it. It's not the worst. That's fun to see the familiar faces and to hear some of the like sounds and stuff that the show had and whatever, and see where they made it to. But if you want to watch it, you watch it. If you don't, you don't.
All right. Well, anything else before we close it out? I will throw it back to you, Becca, again to give everybody the details on the stream. But I just wanted to go over the contact information and stuff for the show real quick. So this is Hailing Frequencies. You can find us on Twitter at Hail Frequencies. We're also on Facebook, where we have all of our co-hosts and the different guests that join the show are pretty much all there, answering questions and posting stuff. So it's Hailing Frequencies, a Next Generation podcast if you search on Facebook. The email address is hailfrequencies@gmail.com. And we had a little bit of interaction from our last episode. I just wanted to cover really quick. Again, from our friend Damon Mike, who I had some questions last episode about some of the uniforms that were worn. There was a guy in like a gray uniform, and I had no idea where he was coming from. And Mike explained that is a utility coverall for a non-civilian or a non-Starfleet officer civilian scientist. So that's where that came from. So I didn't know anything about that. And he gave me some insight on the Jeremy Astor character, who was the little kid who was, they were messing with his dead mother, in the episode. He never pops up again on the show, but he comes back for an issue of the Star Trek Next Generation comics and in 2 of the novels. And it says that he went to live with his aunt on Earth. but also gets close with Worf's adoptive human parents. So Jeremy
Nice.
in the novels grows up to become an archaeologist like his mother, which I thought was very nice because
That is cool.
I wanted to know what happens to him. So, it's the other thing I wanted to talk about. This was a really interesting theory on Mike's behalf. We talked a little bit about the lighting in Worf's quarters during the ceremony that he had to honor Jeremy's mother, and the lighting was blue, and usually like they're red and everything's very aggressive, and we were trying to figure out why the blue lighting. And Mike says maybe purely speculation, but perhaps the color is meant to signify a different sort of memorial ritual than most red-lit Klingon ceremonies. As Worf says, the death was senseless, so this isn't, some kind of throw your head back and roar to the sky like the other Klingon rituals are. This is maybe a much more somber and subdued ceremony, maybe for those who die by misfortune rather than combat, but still deserve recognition for dying in the line of duty. So I thought that was a really interesting way to look at it, and good theory on Klingon rituals and their use of color. And thanks Damon, Mike, for sending that information in. And again, if any of you out there would like to reach out to the show or answer some of our questions, or let me know why Picard would take the helm over somebody else, or why they would blow up that ship, feel free to reach out to the show. I hope you guys enjoyed this video version of Hailing Frequencies. Thanks to Level Up for hosting us for the event. And Becca, do you want to talk a little bit more about where people can find the event and how they can check it out?
Yeah, I mean, chances are if you're watching this pre-recorded, you're watching the event. But it will be on Facebook, YouTube, and our Twitch channel, all of which are just Level Up Entertainment. You can find them. We will have links on all, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We'll have links and everything advertising this all the time. We're going to have all sorts of guests and fun stuff. We'll be doing like Jackbox with these people probably at some point. So, just tune in. We are also raising money for the food bank of...
Community Food Bank of New Jersey.
Yeah, I was going to say, there was a word in there. Community Food Bank of New Jersey. We'll be raising money for that.
South Jersey area, with the South Jersey, Atlantic County area.
I just figure we can use the chance that we have having people all together to just see if you got an extra couple bucks, donate some food to people who need it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Civilian Greg, Civilian Becca, thank you guys for joining me on this episode of Hailing Frequencies. We will touch base with both of you later on this season, but I really appreciate you guys spending your night and helping me cover the episode Booby Trap.
It's always fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on behalf of everyone here at Hailing Frequencies, this is Ensign Harry, and we are signing off.
Hailing frequencies closed.